After making the Super Bowl 5 out of 6 years, the Kansas City Chiefs had a bit of a down year in the 2025 season. This was a team that really struggled to get off the ground early on in the year, and they never were able to make up ground as they finished the year with a 6-11 record, missing the playoffs and finishing third in their own division. And yet, a lot of people seem to think that Kansas City will be a bounce back candidate. Patrick Mahomes should be fully recovered from the ACL. This is a team that upgraded the run game, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about the moves that the Chiefs made and if they are enough to not only get them back into the playoffs, but to get them back into Super Bowl contention. If you guys do enjoy NFL breakdowns like this, be sure to hit that like button as a football animation will appear, and comment down below what are your expectations for the Kansas City Chiefs entering this year, and let me know if you think I'm too high or too low on this team. But let's start with this team and start the same way that we start every conversation here, and that is with the coaching staff. And Andy Reid is here for another year. And look, Andy Reid has had a ton of success here. He's been very successful in Kansas City, obviously with the Super Bowls. But I will say that this is an offense that over the last couple of seasons has really struggled. And this is a team that has really been reliant on its defense to get them in the Super Bowl. And I think even the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, that was a purely defensive effort. This is an offense that has not been as explosive. They have not had as many big plays. And you can point to Matt Nagy, who ends up taking the Giants offensive coordinator job. The Chiefs opt to not bring him back. But this is Andy Reid's scheme at the end of the day. And you're just not seeing this offense click in the same ways that they used to. This is a offense with a lot of those West Coast roots. They're going to run that spread. You'll utilize pre-snap motion. There'll be a lot of play action. You see Patrick Mahomes work a lot from the shotgun, and they are going to play that modern, high-flying, West Coast type of offense with a lot of mesh and high-low and spot concepts. They'll utilize the screen game. The run game for Kansas City, to me, is the biggest area where I do worry about this team because they ranked 18th in rushing DVOA last year, but their leading ball carrier was Kareem Hunt with 609 yards. Maybe you could point to the personnel, but this just has not been a very effective run game. They average 106 rushing yards per game as a team. There's just a lot of question marks with me when it comes to this offense and the coaching, because it just hasn't been pretty over the last couple of seasons. And I am a little bit concerned that maybe the rest of the league has kind of figured out Andy Reid, and we'll see what happens. I think this is a really interesting year to kind of see if this offense can bounce back. You should have an upgraded running game on paper. And they bring in Eric Bieniemy to be the offensive coordinator, who was here for a few years. Again, though, I think that you see Andy Reid, similar to some of these top-tier defensive minds, he's going to make a lot of these guys money, but they just haven't had a lot of success. And Eric Bieniemy, he went to Washington to be the offensive coordinator for the Commanders, and it wasn't pretty for that Washington offense. He was the offensive coordinator there for just one season, and then he ends up headed to the college ranks. So it's going to be a really interesting year for this offense, and I'm fascinated to see what this looks like because we have seen these offenses have a lot of success under Andy Reid. But the last couple of years, and I think particularly that 2026 season, or 2025, I should say, it wasn't pretty for this offense. And we're going to have to wait and see. On the defensive side of the ball, I don't really have a lot of question marks around Steve Spagnuolo, who's done such a phenomenal job with this defense, and the way that he's able to be this aggressive, adaptable 4-3 scheme that they're going to utilize a lot of exotic blitzes. We've seen that. He's so adaptable. I think that's the word I'll keep coming back to. He'll disguise those two high safeties. They'll rotate guys off and on the field, and I think he's one of the most brilliant defensive minds in the league. And this is a Chiefs defense that on paper has not been the most talented over the last couple of seasons, and they've been able to get a lot out of this group because of the coaching. And I'm fascinated to see kind of what they're going to do. I know that They've been very good against the run. The passing game was a little suspect, and we'll talk about the reasons why later on. But I think Spagnuolo's an elite coach, and this is a good coaching staff. But I do think that we've started to see maybe some chinks in the armor here and potentially some regression from how elite this team was when they made 5 out of 6 Super Bowls early on in the decade. And we'll see if they're able to recapture that. And a lot of that is going to be with Patrick Mahomes, who, look, Patrick Mahomes is probably already at this point in his career the second greatest quarterback of all time. When you talk about winning, you talk about just all of the success that he's had. But I would be lying to you guys if I said that Patrick Mahomes has played like an elite quarterback over the last 2 seasons. And I think that there is one area that I really worry about with Patrick Mahomes, and it is the deep ball accuracy. This is a quarterback that early on in his career, it felt like if he was dropping back to take these deep posts or these deep outs, he was going to complete that 10 out of 10 times. And over the last couple of seasons, you've started to see those passes, a lot of overthrows. He has made a lot of poor decisions. I think that you've seen the turnover-worthy plays start to come up in terms of percentage from where it was when this team was winning Super Bowls. The average depth of target has come down, but when they've asked him to take these deep shots, he's just not as accurate as he used to be. That's really the only area that I worry about with Patrick Mahomes, and I don't think you consistently need to have that deep ball that was so prevalent early on in his career, because Patrick Mahomes is a really good quarterback. Like, I think last year we really got to see him utilize his legs and his athleticism because he was running for his life at times, but you see the creativity with him as a runner. He can hit every single throw on the field. You'd like to see the accuracy come up a little bit. His turnover touchdown to interception ratio was 2-1 last year, which was a career worst for him. I want to see that get better, but he's got a crazy arm. He's a really good athlete. He's incredibly accurate with the football for most situations. And he's a winner. And he's tough. And you love all of those things about Patrick Mahomes. And while I think today he might not be the best quarterback in the NFL, you're lying if he's not in your top 3. And I still think that he's going to be fine. He seems to be recovering well from that ACL injury that he suffered in Week 15 against the Chargers. I think he's going to be ready to go by Week 1, and that is huge for this Chiefs team because I think that the backup quarterback room really struggles. What I want to see from Patrick Mahomes this year is I want to see the deep ball accuracy improve, and I actually think that it will because they're going to ask a lot less of Patrick Mahomes this year because they should have a run game, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but this team had no semblances of a run game at any point last year. And I think now that you can open up the run game for Patrick Mahomes, I think you're going to see the accuracy come up. I think you're going to see defenses have to commit to the run a little bit more. And I think we're going to see a really big year, bounce back year from Patrick Mahomes. We'll hit on these backups a little bit. I mean, Justin Fields comes in, and I'm not doing the Justin Fields conversation. He's an okay backup quarterback that is a fun athlete, but he's a really bad quarterback. They draft Garrett Nussmeier in the 7th round, who was kind of a steal where they got him. Never was a big Garrett Nussmeier fan, but at that point in the draft, I think you'd be lying to say that wasn't a good move. And then Chris Oladokun had to come in and start a little bit for this team last year. But overall, this is Patrick Mahomes' team. If you see any of these backups, your season is probably over. So we'll kind of go around through the rest of the roster here, and we'll talk about the biggest move that this team made, and it was signing Kenneth Walker in free agency, the Super Bowl MVP for the Seattle Seahawks. And I don't want to come off as negative here with Kenneth Walker. I really don't. But throughout the regular season of his career, I think he has been a perfectly fine running back. Do I think he is this elite running back? No, he had just over 1,000 yards in 2025, which was 23 yards less than his career high. He's been pretty efficient. Like, he's got good vision. He can bounce runs out. He's much more fast than what you had in Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. He'll give you that speed. He's good after contact. He's physical. Maybe not the best like blocking running back in the world, but where he really made his money was in the playoffs, where he had 116 yards and 3 touchdowns in the divisional round against San Francisco. And then obviously he won Super Bowl MVP. that was the best running we've ever seen from Kenneth Walker, from a contact balance, vision, made some plays for this team as a receiver down the stretch. Like, I thought you really saw the full package for Kenneth Walker, and you started to see him return to the player that he was at Michigan State. Had a career high in missed tackles forced, had a career high in yards of, or carries of 10 or more yards, had just a all-around fantastic season. And with this offensive line in front of him, which I think is significantly better than the offensive line he had in Seattle, I think he can have a good year. I do push back on maybe that he's a top 10 running back in the league. I think maybe that's a little bit rich given just the player that he's been for the first 4 seasons of his career, and a player that Seattle was perfectly okay letting walk in free agency. I think he's going to be a really good addition here, but I do kind of want to point out that he hasn't been a top 10 running back and played at that level throughout his entire career. The other thing that I like that this team did, though, was upgrade the depth in this running back room. They bring in Emery DeMarcado, who is a good player. Like, I think when he's seen the field, he's made some plays. He's really good after contact. He averaged 5.52 yards after contact per attempt on 44 carries. He's been kind of buried in Arizona behind James Conner and some of those guys, but he's got speed and he's made some good plays when he's had the football in his hands. Ball security has got to be an issue, and he's a pretty bad blocker, but as an RB2 or 3, I think that's a good signing. They draft Emmett Johnson in the 4th round out of Nebraska. 5th round, excuse me. Really good signing as well. I don't think he's got great long speed, but he can make guys miss in a phone booth. He's got elite contact balance, and I think he's going to be kind of that Kareem Hunt player for this team, that he's going to do some of the goal line short yardage work, and I think he can be really effective there. And then you got Brashard Smith, who was a rookie last year from SMU, who I don't think we really got to see break out, but I thought this was a steal where they got him. He's got great ball security, and what I like about him is he's probably this team's best receiving option in this backfield. He had 25 receptions for 172 yards. He's still just 23 years old. I think there's some upside there for him to maybe develop as this team's like 3rd down back. And you've got 4 guys that I think are all, relative upgrades over Isaiah Pacheco from last year. You've got a clear-cut number 1 in Kenneth Walker. I think all of these other guys will have a role on this team. And like I said, I think the run game on this team is one of the biggest wild cards, because if this run game can be effective, it's going to take a lot of pressure off of Patrick Mahomes. And I think that is the number 1 priority for this team. I think the number 2 priority is to find a breakout wide receiver on this team, because there are a lot of names in this receiving room. I don't think you have a guy that is your standout number 1. Rashee Rice is going to be the guy that is going to be labeled as this team's number 1 receiver. When he's on the field, he's looked really good. Like, as a rookie in 2023, we saw him go for 1,200 yards, including playoffs. Had a good year in 2024, then he got hurt, and then 2025, he battled the suspension and he battled even more injuries. He's been a really good, physical weapon for this team, because he was kind of more of a speed option there at SMU, a deep ball threat. Here, they really utilize him within 5 yards. His average depth of target through his career is exactly 5 yards, and they're going to get this guy the ball on screens. That is a staple of the Andy Reid offense. He is really physical after the catch. Yards after catch per reception, he averages 8. He's got good contact balance, can make guys miss in the open field, has 32 missed tackles forced in his career. He's a really good weapon for this team, but we have to talk about the reliability. This is a guy that has been dealing with some off-the-field stuff. We're not going to go into it here, but it's definitely taken a toll on this locker room, and it's kind of hard to defend a guy when you see all the things that he's getting into. That's a bit of a worry. I think he regressed a little bit in terms of the hands. He had 6 drops in 2025. He had 3 drops combined, or 4 drops combined throughout his first 2 seasons on what would have been 160 targets. On 77 targets, he had 6 drops last year. He fumbled the ball a little bit more. he just didn't look like the same Rashee Rice after coming back from that suspension. Now, he still had a couple of big games in there, and he's going to be able to make those plays for you. But is he the most reliable number one receiver? I don't know, and I could see it going either way. Xavier Worthy is this other team's receiver who was a former first-round pick from Texas. They drafted him to be this team's kind of speed weapon on this team. He dealt with some injury stuff last year, missed a few games, but the big issue with him coming out of Texas was the drops. He seems to have cleaned that up, but this kind of goes into what I was talking about with the deep ball accuracy of Patrick Mahomes. Xavier Worthy, I think, can run those deep routes, and he's been really effective at it. His average depth of target, 12.5 yards. He's taken some of those deep shots, but his longest reception on the season was 42 yards, and that's just not the type of playmaker that he is. You want to see him be more of that dynamic weapon in the open field. I'd like to see them use him in the Rashee Rice mold because he's so quick and can make plays, but they've used him more as more of a boundary receiver here. He's played 69% of his snaps out wide, and he's a fine player. He's just limited physically because he's 172 pounds, and if Patrick Mahomes is struggling to hit those deep balls, which is what Xavier Worthy does best, I do have worries about if this is going to be the best case scenario or a great fit for him. But they have other options here. Tyquan Thornton was a guy that actually played okay for this team last year. 438 yards, had a career high. This team loves to prioritize these big, speedy weapons because they want to utilize Patrick Mahomes' arm talent. And I think Tyquan Thornton did that. His average depth of target last year was 27.8 yards. He was this team's go-to deep ball receiver, and I thought he did a pretty good job. He's not the most elusive route runner or anything like that, but he's a guy that can win those deep balls for Patrick Mahomes, and I think that's probably your true X receiver, if you will, in this team. There are a few other options on this team. There are three other guys that I'm fascinated by. We'll start with the second-year receiver in Jalen Royals, who I really loved coming out of Utah State. He missed all year last season with an injury, but I think there's real upside for him to develop. I guess he did play in, 5 games last year, had just 2 receptions. He is a really fascinating player to me because he's 6 foot, he's 205 pounds. I think he's probably best as that Y receiver, which is typically where they line Rashee or Xavier Worthy up. But he's a phenomenal route runner to all 3 levels of the field. He's got incredibly strong hands, and he was just a playmaker for Utah State, a guy that had 839 yards in his last season. But throughout his career at Utah State, he had just 9 drops for a career 6.7 drop rate. He was physical at the top of his routes with an over 50% contested catch rate. I think you could definitely see a world where he's got a full season to get acclimated, get healthy. Jalen Royals has the skill set to be this team's number 2, probably. I don't know if he's a good number 1. They draft Cyrus Allen in the 5th round, who feels like a really good Xavier Worthy backup because he's undersized, he's quick, ran a ridiculous 40 time. He's so twitchy. I could definitely see a world where he can make some plays for this team. And then Jeff Caldwell, also good player. He's just really stiff. He ran a ridiculous 40 and he's 6'5". They're just taking a chance on him as a UDFA because, well, he's got some potential to develop as a true X if Tyquan Thornton's not working here. But as you can see with this receiving room, there's a lot of like, oh, if this guy can do this or if they can do this. I just don't know if they've got that true number 1 guy right now. I think Rashee Rice is a good number 2 probably, but he's unreliable at best. Jalen Royals, I think, has got the highest upside of anybody in this group. We haven't seen it yet. Xavier Worthy, I think, is limited as playing that boundary role because of his size. Tyquan Thornton's a pure deep ball threat. There's just a lot of question marks around this group, and I do think this could ultimately be what hinders this team from taking that next step and being back into Super Bowl contention. Another reason I think that is, I think it's pretty clear that this tight end room, particularly Travis Kelce, this is a clear sign of regression. And I wouldn't be shocked if Travis Kelce retires after this year. I mean, he had a bit of a bounce back year. I thought he looked okay last year. The yards per reception, he played a lot better, 11.2. The chemistry started to come back with him and Mahomes. The drops, he had near a career high in drops with 7. He's gotten better as a blocker as his career has gone on, but that's not his game. This is a receiving tight end who's slowed down. And we've seen that for the last few years. He had a career low in terms of targets at 103, or his lowest since his rookie season in 2014. He's a great player, first ballot Hall of Famer, and he's still got a role for this team because he is that chemistry guy for Patrick Mahomes, the guy to get open across the middle and make plays after the catch. And he's good in that role, but he's clearly lost a step athletically. And I just don't think you can count on him to be this team's number one that he was from 2018 all the way up until 2023, where he had over 1,000 yards from 2015 to 2023, double-digit touchdowns in 4 of those seasons. Like, he has been an incredible player, but he's not the same guy that he used to be. And I don't think they've got another guy that you love. Noah Gray, good player, plays for this team in 12 personnel, decent after the catch, but he is here for 12 personnel blocking purposes. That's what he's going to do. And he's a fine player. I don't think he's elite, but he's okay. Jared Wiley, a bit of a disappointment and a draft miss by me because I thought he had the ability to kind of step in and be the long-term Kelce replacement, but he has just 2 targets in the first 2 seasons of his career, very much in that Travis Kelce mold of just a pure receiving tight end. They've got a few of those guys here, Jake Brenningstool and John Michael Gillenborg. We'll see if one of these guys can hit, but I'm not really expecting much from any of those guys. And it just leaves this weaponry kind of just like, yeah, it's fine. I don't think it's anything spectacular, but it's not going to hold this team back necessarily. And we'll see. We'll see kind of what this team can be. But going to more of a positive outlook for this team, I think this offensive line feels like it's in the best spot that it's been in a long time. And I think a big part of that is you've got youth and optimism up front. And I think it starts with Josh Simmons, the first round pick from the 2025 NFL draft. As a rookie, he had his ups and downs, had a pretty bad start in week 1 against the Chargers where he allowed 4 pressures, but he only allowed 14 more pressures throughout the rest of his season, which was about 319 more pass blocking snaps after that game. He only allowed 14 pressures. In pass protection, I thought he looked really good. He has the size, the length. He looks like he's slimmed down this year, and he's a phenomenal athlete. I think the arrow's pointing up, and it could be pointing up astronomically high because he's a really good athlete. You saw the footwork, you saw the athleticism in pass protection where he's got a good kick slide, only allowed 2 sacks on the year. There's reason to believe he can be great. You want to see the run blocking get a little bit better. He got a little bit grabby at times. He had 8 penalties last year on just 526 snaps. So you'd like to see that get better, but I feel great about him at left tackle long term. The other question, or the only question I have right now with this team, is going to be with just some of the depth. I don't know if they've got the best depth. Kingsley Suamataia is this team's left guard right now. They played him at tackle as a rookie in 198 snaps, and needless to say, it was a disaster. They moved him inside to guard a little bit better. This was kind of the scouting report on Suamataia coming in. He's pretty versatile, good pass protector, good run blocker, might just struggle at times at tackle. They kicked him inside to guard, and while he did take his losses, I thought he looked a lot better. He looked more comfortable at guard. The pass blocking grades went up pretty significantly. He still allowed 35 pressures and 3 sacks, 2 of those coming against Tennessee and Jeffrey Simmons, so I'll give him a pass there. And the other one came against the Eagles. Both those games he allowed 5 pressures, but outside of that, pretty good season, and I think he can run block for you. So I like Kingsley Suamataia, And then the other two interior players are awesome, and two of the best players in the league at their positions. Creed Humphrey is the best player in the league at his position at center. He is phenomenal and truly one of the best players in the National Football League. Elite pass blocker who seems like he's just getting better each year. He allowed just 8 pressures this past season on 742 pass blocking snaps. That is absolutely phenomenal. He allowed 7 pressures in 2024 on 829 pass blocking snaps. He has been absolute rock in pass protection. And as a run blocker, I mean, he hasn't had a season graded out lower than an 84.1. He has really good power. He generates that from his lower half. He is able to move guys with ease in the run game. I absolutely love what he brings to the table at center. And like I said, I think he is the best center in football. And you've got a case. I don't know if the case is going to be as strong as it was maybe a couple of years ago, but I do think that there's an argument that Trey Smith is in the discussion for one of the best guards in the NFL. 6'6", 321 pounds, really good athlete. He had a bit of a down year in terms of run blocking, but his pass blocking efficiency was good. A lot of career low in pressures. Now, in defense, he had a career low in terms of his snaps. He missed some time due to injury. They brought him back, though. There was some question marks on if they were going to lose him in free agency. They did not. They bring him back on a good contract. And I feel great about the interior of this line if Suamatea can continue to take that step up. And then at right tackle, this team has Jalen Moore, who is okay. It's probably an upgrade over what this team had in Jawan Taylor. Jalen Moore played 427 snaps. He was kind of a spot starter for this team when Josh Simmons went out. And he was fine. I think, he's not going to be anything spectacular. He was a former 5th round pick, was a backup tackle. This is really his first true starting experience. He's kind of been a swing tackle throughout his career, but I don't think he's going to be a liability for you. He did allow 27 pressures and 3 sacks last year. So you'd like to see that maybe get a little bit better. Outside of that, though, like I said, I don't really love the depth on this offensive line. Issa Pohl is kind of this team's best swing tackle right now, who hasn't been awesome. He allowed 15 pressures on 186 pass blocking snaps. Started 4 games for this team last year. Good run blocker. Maybe there's some upside there. He's 25 years old. They have Ethan Driscoll, who was an undrafted pickup for this team. On the interior, I don't really love anybody except for Hunter Norzad, who I actually think can be I wouldn't be shocked if he started at some point in his career. He's kind of been a backup center, was really good at Penn State. I thought he had physicality, could run block, good pass protector. Just kind of has been obviously blocked by Creed Humphrey. But this offense is fascinating. There's a lot to talk about with this offense. And they're as good as Patrick Mahomes is, as good as I think Kenneth Walker is as a signing. I think the offensive line will be good. It's hard to win a lot of football games when you don't have guys that can reliably get open. And I don't know if they have the right infrastructure in place. I think the run game will be better. I think Patrick Mahomes will be better than he was last year, at least. And we'll see. I think that's going to be a big question mark for this team. But as we pivot over to the defensive side of the ball, this defense unfortunately got significantly worse, in my opinion. They lost a couple of starters in their secondary, including an all-pro in Trent McDuffie. They also lost Jalen Watson on this team. They lost Leo Chanel at linebacker. And there are going to be question marks around this defense. And I think Chris Jones is going to be probably the biggest question mark because, look, Chris Jones has been another just staple here in Kansas City, been one of the best players on this team, been one of the best defensive players in the NFL. He was not very good last year, and we just kind of have to talk about that. He missed 20% of his tackles. He had his worst year kind of up there in terms of pressures. He had his 3rd worst year in terms of pressures at 63 total. To put that into perspective, from 2022 to 2024, he had 88, 91, and 97 pressures. He had multiple seasons with double-digit sacks. 2025, he had 7 sacks on the year. he was not very good last year. The pressure rate came down to a 10.4%, which is the lowest of his career. There were a lot of issues with Chris Jones. As a run defender, he's never been this elite player. He's not been bad, but he did have some struggles last season as a run defender. I don't know what to make of it. He's 32 years old. He's a really gifted pass rusher, but the pass rushing production seems to have slowed down. And that's pretty concerning for a team that I don't think has a good number 2 pass rusher right now. Or at least I think they've got a good number 2, but it's a good number 2, assuming Chris Jones is this team's number 1. And last year he was not. And I think this defense struggled to consistently create pressure. They were 23rd in passing DVOA. I think a big part of that is they didn't have a good pass rush. Chris Jones has got to bounce back, and if he can't, I think it could be another pretty disappointing year in Kansas City. And to be honest with you guys, I'm not really expecting Chris Jones to bounce back. And we'll talk about some of the other pieces that they have, but George Karlaftis is this team's next pass rusher. And he's a good player. I think I often underrate George Karlaftis' impact on this team. He's a perfectly fine player. I don't think he's a spectacular athlete. I don't think he's going to be, ideally, I think he would be your number 2 pass rusher kind of throughout his career. That's what he's been. But, he's a decent run defender. He's got a few different ways that he can win. And I think he's a fine number 2, had 66 pressures last year, had 7 sacks on the season. So again, not a bad year from George Karlaftis. But again, I think you're asking a lot of him. And I think that this team really did a poor job building in terms of their edge depth, because a lot of these guys are really limited in terms of what they can do athletically. We'll just kind of go down the line. Ashton Gilotti's entering year 2. Really like what he could do as a run defender, and I liked him coming out of Louisville a good bit, but he's not a very explosive athlete, doesn't have great length, and he did struggle to be a consistent pass rusher. Just 24 pressures on 268 pass rushing snaps. He had a pressure rate lower than 10, which is kind of where you want to see it. I think he could be a good early downs player, not a great, third down, get after the quarterback type of guy. And then they also have Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who at this point I'm almost ready to just write off. I just don't think it's going to happen. He missed all of 2025, and through the first 2 seasons of his career, had a 9.5% pressure rate. He had 30 total pressures and 3 total sacks. I just don't know if it's going to happen for him. He's currently listed as this team's starter. The guy that is interesting to me is R. Mason Thomas, who is a complete pivot from the types that they have gone for. R. Mason Thomas has short arms. He's undersized, but incredibly explosive, and going to be this team's true designated pass rusher as a speed element off the edge. I don't think this team has really ever had, at least in the Steve Spagnuolo era. And that's great. I actually really like that fit. I just wasn't very high on R. Mason Thomas as a prospect. I think that if he doesn't win off his first step, he gets stuck on blocks too often. And while I think he's got great speed, great bend, he converts speed to power really well, there are just consistency concerns with me with R. Mason Thomas that we'll see if he's able to answer them, but he's got a lot to prove as a second-round rookie. And you can kind of get the picture here that I just don't love this pass rush as a whole. Now, I think Spags does a good job of, bringing such unique looks that it kind of makes life easier for these guys, and you're not putting so much strain on your defensive line, but they're going to need these guys, and we'll see what they can do. As we talk about the rest of this interior group, though, I actually really like what they have. They bring in Khyiris Tonga from the Patriots, who a pretty decent addition, I would say. 330 pounds. He's going to be more of a true traditional nose tackle for this team, who's just going to take up space off the line of scrimmage. He's a pretty solid run defender, tackles well, had a career best year in New England, where had a career high in pressures, had 17 run stops, made some plays against the run, and played pretty well for them down the stretch in the playoffs. So maybe Khyiris Tonga can break out, but I'm not really expecting it. I am expecting, though, that they're going to get some good production out of the two young defensive tackles that they've invested into. Omar Norman-Lott didn't play a ton, played in just 69 snaps for the Chiefs last year. I really liked him coming out of Tennessee. I thought that he was a guy that was super explosive and just won in a variety of ways as a pass rusher. He had power. He had a two-handed swipe. He could win off the line of scrimmage with his speed. We just didn't see a lot of him last year. He had 6 pressures, 1 sack. I do think that there's potential for him to break out. He just missed some time due to injury. And I think if you could get that player next to Chris Jones, that would be awesome. I'm not really expecting it for Omar Norman-Lott. But Peter Woods is a huge wild card for this team. Their first round pick that they took at the back end of the first round, who early on in the college football season, people thought Peter Woods was going to be a top 5 pick at worst. He is a ridiculously good athlete. He's a guy that, at least as a sophomore, showed the ability to rush the passer, showed the ability to be an elite run defender. And I think early on in his career, Peter Woods is going to be that. He's going to be a very good edge setter in the run game, which is weird to say because he doesn't play the edge, but stick with me here. I think he's going to be a good run defender. The arm length was alarmingly short for him, and I worry about that as he goes into the next level if he's going to be able to consistently win as a pass rusher. And that's a big concern for me. And you can kind of see how this defensive line there's a lot of question marks on really every player that we talked about here. I do want to shout out Cole Brevard, the UDFA pickup out of Texas. I think he could be a traditional nose tackle if they're looking for it because he's got size and is a really good run defender. But yeah, this is a really interesting defensive line that I think its success entirely depends on if Chris Jones can bounce back. And if he can't, well, I think this could be a bit of another disappointing year in Kansas City. But let's talk about the linebacker room, where they did lose Leo Chanel, who has been this team's kind of third linebacker. But by the nature of things, if he's your third linebacker, you still have 2 other guys that you feel pretty good about. Nick Bolton has just been reliable. I don't know that he is the best linebacker in the world. Had a really good 2025 season, though, where he had 109 tackles, 60 run stops. He is a really, really effective run defender. I don't know that he's the most gifted coverage player in the world, but he made some plays, had 3 pass breakups, had an interception, still just 26 years old. I like Nick Bolton. I think he's perfectly fine as this team's number 1 linebacker. And then this team also has Drew Tranquill on this team, who, again, good player. He is a little bit better in coverage, but both of these guys are awesome tacklers, really good run defenders. Tranquill graded out better in run defense than Nick Bolton. He missed just 4 tackles on the season, 39 run stops. Both of those guys are really good players. You can utilize them as blitz threats. They're decent athletes. And I like what you got there. If you're looking for who's going to be the Leo Chanel replacement when this team wants to play with some more, 3 linebacker sets, Jeffrey Bassa is fascinating to me. I really liked him coming out of Oregon. And in the 40 snaps he played, he graded out really, really well. He had a forced fumble on the season against Washington in the 4 snaps he played in that game. Still just 23 years old. Look, he's a little bit stiff athletically, but I do think there's upside there. And they don't have a lot of other guys that I would bet on. Cooper McDonald is the only other guy maybe even worth mentioning here. But you go 3 deep in the linebacker room, and you got a backup that I think can step in case of injury. So that's what this team's looking for. I think this is the area of the defense that you feel most confident about going into the year. You probably have a top 10 to 12 linebacker room in the league. But the secondary, to me, is without a doubt the biggest question mark on this Chiefs roster, because you lost 2 starters, and 2 damn good starters at that. They drafted Mansour Delane in the first round, and I really like Mansour Delane. I think he's going to be a good corner. Corner is a bit of a hard position to immediately impact. You don't always get your Sauce Gardners or your Quinyon Mitchells, but Mansour Delane is a really smart coverage defender. I thought in man coverage, he was phenomenal. I thought you saw him be able to play on an island at LSU this season, where he ran a really good 40, which honestly was a bit of a surprise at how good of a 40 time that he ran. He can stop and go on a dime. He's got fluid hips. You can move him in the slot if you need to. He's not a great run defender, and I do want to see him get stronger, but the ball skills were there. The closing speed was there. The tackling was there for him. I don't have a ton of questions about Delane as a corner prospect. It's just that he's a rookie, and it might take some time for him to kind of take that next step. Your other starter right now is Noah Williams, and the Chiefs, they clearly have a type. They love these tall, long corners. Noah Williams, as a rookie, one of the most underrated players in the league. Played just 458 defensive snaps for the Chiefs last year. He had 4 pass breakups on the season, allowed just 54% when targeted. But it felt like every time I was watching a Chiefs game, Noah Williams was making a play. This is a guy that he made some plays against the run, had 14 run stops, had 29 tackles on the season. You saw some plays with the ball skills. I think Noah Williams is a major breakout candidate this year. I was really high on him coming out of Cal because I loved the fluidity. I loved the ball skills from him. And I thought he was just able to make good plays on the ball. We saw that from him as a rookie. He started a few games down the stretch, started 4 games for this team, graded out pretty well, particularly the last 3 weeks of the season. Let's see if he can kind of take that next step into being like a true number 1, maybe number 2 corner, depending on what you get from Delane. But both those guys have question marks. There's no doubt about it. And if you look at, secondary depth, this team brings back L'Jarius Sneed, which is interesting. L'Jarius Sneed was really bad in Tennessee. Really, really bad. And yet I kind of just have all the confidence in the world that he's going to be fine here. Like, he was so good for the Chiefs for 4 years that Titans gave him a massive contract. Now he missed time due to injury, which I think was the reason Kansas City let him go to begin with, was because there were some medical red flags with him. But just was not the same player. You didn't see the ball production. You didn't see him flying around. He's going to get grabby. Penalties have been an issue for him, but I think you can play him. He's a, good DB depth here. You got Melvin Smith, who was a UDFA pickup out of, I want to say, Southeast Arkansas or something like that. He played for this team, or Southern Arkansas. They brought him in, probably more of a practice squad guy. And then Christian Fulton is the other player. I mean, they've got some interesting depth. Fulton, I thought, was going to have a big year in Kansas City last year. Missed time due to injury. He was okay, I guess. Played in just 208 snaps. Was kind of a CB3 for them. Probably will fall into the same role. They take a chance on Kyer Elam. They brought in a lot of names. The name that I feel best about in the secondary is Noah Williams. And we'll see. If Mansour Delane's really good for this team's going to be fine. But it's asking a lot out of a rookie corner, and I just don't know if I'm ready to do that. In the nickel, which is the even tougher spot to kind of try to fill, because that is, they've historically played Trent McDuffie in the nickel a good bit. They bring in Kader Kohou. I'm fascinated by Kohou. He was pretty good in Miami as a coverage defender, had 2 pass breakups, or 2 interceptions, 3 pass breakups in 24. Really bad tackler, really bad run defender, but good athlete that can fly around to the ball. Maybe he breaks out here. And then Jaden Kennedy, another really slept on prospect that I think is really technically sound. He's not a superstar athlete, but he's always in the right place. He defends the run well. He's strong. He's got good ball skills. I think Kennedy will start for this team by the end of the year, and he might start week 1. I think he might beat Kohou for that job. But in that case, you're starting 2 rookies in the secondary, which it's not unheard of, but it's hard to kind of predict these things. And I do think it messes up with kind of the ceiling of this team. We'll finish this out with the safety room, where they've got a couple of okay safeties, I guess you could say. Nothing spectacular. Chamari Connor is this team's starter. Pretty bad in coverage. I mean, just not very good ball skills. Just 2 pass breakups and 1 interception. Allowed 82.4% when targeted. Missed 17% of his tackles. Had a couple of forced fumbles. He's okay. Definitely had his worst season of his career in 2025 when they asked him to start for the first time. Maybe he plays a little bit in the slot. I think that's something that we've seen him do. And he's been all right in the slot. If you're just not getting those guys to work in Kohu or Kennedy, I think you can move Chamari Connor into the slot. This team brings in Alohi Gilman, who, again, I'm not the biggest Alohi Gilman fan. Played okay last year in both LA and Baltimore. A little bit better as a coverage defender, I would say. Better ball skills. He had 6 pass breakups on the season. The reception percentage, a lot better. And I think he can be more of that traditional free safety for you with his kind of instincts and range on the back end. I don't think he's anything spectacular, but definitely a guy that I think can start. The depth here, it's not awesome. Jaden Hicks is a player that I really liked coming out of Washington State, who I think still has a chance here. He's 212 pounds. Like, he's entering year 3. Didn't tackle well in 2025, but I think that the coverage is going to come along. I think he's better as a box safety. And in a perfect world, like, I would probably start Chamari Connor in the nickel. I would play Jaden Hicks in that strong safety role, and I would play Alohi Gilman at free safety. I think that's probably the highest floor that this team's going to get. Outside of that, I don't love the depth in this secondary. You've got Chris Roland Wallace here, who has played. He's been okay at times, had a pretty good year. Great tackler, has not missed a single tackle in his career. Had an interception, had a pass breakup. Just the overall down-to-down consistency will be the question mark with him. They bring in Xavier Wampa. They bring in Deshaun Singleton as UDFAs. But yeah, this Chiefs team's fascinating to me because this team is clearly not as talented as the team that made the Super Bowl 5 out of 6 years. Clearly not. They are clearly lacking in some of the big areas on this team that you want to see kind of be better. With that being said, I do like a lot of the pieces here. I think there's a chance that this team could, get back to where we've seen them. And they've got a 3rd place schedule. So like the schedule could maybe fall favorably for them. However, you've got a couple of tough divisions here. Yes, you do get to play the very easy AFC East where, well, I'm not going to say very easy because both Buffalo and New England are playoff teams from last year. You got Cincinnati, who was the 3rd place in their division. Cincinnati's going to be better. And you've got the NFC West, who have 3 playoff teams and then the Cardinals. And your own division is really difficult. So this is just a really tough season. You get your bye week in week 5, which I don't know if that helps or hurts this Chiefs team. And as I look through the schedule, we'll start in the division. I think this team probably goes 3-3 in their division. I think that they probably lose both Broncos games. I think the Broncos are going to be really, really good. And I think you split with the Chargers. You beat both the Raiders games. Great. In the AFC East, let's say you go 3-1. I think you can beat one of the Patriots or Bills. So that's 6 wins there after the division. I think you can beat the Colts. That's going to be 7 wins. I think you can, beat Atlanta. That's going to be 8 wins. Arizona could be a win. That's 9. The Jets, that kind of factors in. As I look at this team, though, like, it's tough. This team's really tough to predict. I am predicting that this team finishes the season with a 10-7 record. I think that's kind of where they go. I do think it's going to be a bounce back year. I don't think they win the division. Heck, I don't even think they come in 2nd in the division. I'm pretty high on the Chargers going into the year as well. But 10-7 might be enough to get you into the wild card this year. And if that's the case, we know what can happen when the Chiefs make the playoffs. So I've got this team at 10-7. I think we will see a bit of a bounce back year. And I am betting on Patrick Mahomes to have a phenomenal season. I think he's going to be really, really good entering this year. But I'd love to hear from you guys, Chiefs fans. Am I too high? Am I too low on this team? Comment down below. Do you think that this Chiefs team has a chance to make some noise? But leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.